Hi guys, so today I want to show you some books that I have recently bought for my language learning. These are 5 books that I have purchased in the last month and that I didn't talk about on my YouTube channel. So I wanted to share with you what kind of books these are, how I'm using them, and if I like them or not. So it's going to be a small review and a little bit of a book haul. For the people who are following me on Instagram, you have probably seen some of these books, others maybe you didn't, because some of these books I do have like for a couple of weeks now, and some of these books came in last week. But I do want to talk about my first impressions of this book. So are they user friendly? Are they worth the money so far? And is this everything that I wanted from this book? So yeah, I'm going to go through these books with you guys and give you some small information about what I think about it. So it's not going to be an in-depth review. So if you like this kind of videos about language learning, the books that I use, and just in general talking about languages, because right now I'm learning Japanese and Korean. So if this sounds interesting to you, please subscribe to the channel. Just click the subscribe button. I upload videos every week on this channel on Sunday, and most of the time it's all about language learning. And in the future I want to make more videos about language learning resource reviews, so more videos like this. If you want me to try out any language learning resources for Japanese or Korean, just link the resources down below and I will try it out for you guys and make a review about it. All of the resources that I'm going to talk about today are things that I just wanted to use myself, especially because I just started out with Korean last month. I'm still learning the alphabet yet and try to learn the pronunciations. So in this video you will see the book that I'm going to use for my beginning in Korean learning. So yeah, let's get started right away with this first book, which is Breaking into Japanese Literature. I wanted to read more in Japanese, and I did have some manga in Japanese, but it's quite hard to read because in the manga it's not explained what kind of grammar structure is used or what kind of kanji is used and how you pronounce those kanjis and what's the meaning. It's not explained in manga. So manga you just need to read yourself and to look up the words yourself, and it can be quite difficult. And I wanted to read something else, of course, than only manga books. So I looked online and I found 2 books that were quite interesting for me, which was this book, so Breaking into Japanese Literature, but also Read Real Japanese, which I'm going to talk about later. So all of these books I ordered through a Dutch website, which is bol.com, but you can also find all of these books on Amazon. So I will link down below all of these books in the Dutch side, but also with the Amazon link, so you can find them as well. So this book costed 20 euros, and for now, for everything that I have seen in this book, I don't think that's expensive for this, because you will learn a lot. There are some quite interesting stories in here, and I will just show you how this book works. So first of all, you have 7 modern classic stories with in original Japanese and with the English translations next to it. And in the stories they say that 50% of all common used kanji is covered and every single kanji word is explained. And what I also like about this is that you can listen to the stories as well. They provide a website where you can free download all of the sound files, so you can listen to the stories and read along with the sound files. So I think that's a great way to study something, because you're not only reading but you're also hearing how to pronounce the words. So all of the stories are in here are short stories from famous Japanese writers, which are Natsume Soseki. I don't know if I pronounce everything right, but there are 4 stories from Natsume Soseki, and there are 3 stories from Akutagawa Ryunosuke. And all the stories are also divided into levels. So you have level 1, which are all the stories from Natsume Soseki. And you have also level 2, which includes 2 stories from Akutagawa, and level 3, which includes 1 story from Akutagawa. And the story is Rashomon, because it's a little bit more difficult to read and they use more difficult kanji. So that's why they divide it into different levels. Then I will show you what else you will get in this book. So the first thing for every author, so there are 2 authors in this book, you have some information about the author. So this is about Natsume Soseki, and then you have the stories. And I have read on the internet that all of the stories are a little bit dark in here, so like a little bit of thriller and horror kind of stories. So that's why I was very excited to actually read this in the original language, because I do love horror and thriller books. So this is how the stories are portrayed in the book. You have the Japanese original story, then you have the words which are used in the story with the kanjis, but also with the sounding in hiragana, and then you have the English translation. You can finish one short story very quickly, but if you want to learn all the words as well and to write things out, for me it takes a lot of time. I want to write everything out and to pay more attention to the kanjis that I'm learning. So for me it takes a long time to go through a short story. And for most kanjis they give the pronunciation in hiragana, but the kanjis they already showed you previously in the stories, they won't give the pronunciation. So you need to remember the kanji's pronunciation and meaning, or you need to go back to read it again. And I think this way you're actively learning, because you're reading something, you don't know anymore how to pronounce it or what's the meaning of the kanji, and you need to look it up, but you can look it up immediately. So I think it's a great way of learning. So overall, I think this book is worth the money. I'm very excited to use it, and I think you can learn so much from it. The second book is Real Japanese Fiction, 6 short stories by contemporary writers. So writers from our time. There are quite some good Japanese writers in here, and they have, from every writer, they have one story. So this book is designed in a Japanese way. So you'll start like on the end of the book, you will start with the reading, like you will start with all the Japanese books. And like the beginning of the book for the Europeans, how we used to look at a book, is the ending of the book. So like, yeah, it's a little bit different, so you can get used to Japanese books. So like I said, it takes me a long time to get through one story. I'm still the first story, and I try to write all of the words out that I don't know. I try to read the sentence a couple of times. Even if it takes me a long time, it is very fun to do, and I think it's so great that you can read it in the original language. So yeah, it is very motivational to go through the stories. So again, in this book you have the Japanese story, of a part of the Japanese story, and then you have the English translation next to it. So in the previous book they had just the English translation, like a paragraph translated into the English, and you can read it all together in English, but here they did it a little bit different. You have a Japanese sentence and then the literal English translation, then again a Japanese sentence, and then again the literal English translation. And then another thing that I really like about this book is that for every story they have notes, and notes are literally everything explained about the grammar structure, about the kanji that is used for the specific story. So you can go to the back side of the book and read through the notes if you want to know more about the grammar structure and just more about the sentences that are used. And they also have a dictionary on the back side, so you can look up all of the words, and the CD on the back. So I think this book has more information than this one, but it's also a little bit more expensive. So this one costed me 37 euros. But you will have a lot of information, a lot of stories, and all kinds of different writers. So this book has 2 writers and 7 stories, and this book has 6 writers and 6 stories, but there are a little bit of larger stories, and they have all of those notes on the stories. I started reading this book last week, and only in the first page I learned a lot of new words, and it was quite hard to get through it. So I don't think this book is for like absolute beginners, because when you don't know hiragana and katakana, it is almost impossible to go through this book. When you know hiragana, katakana, and a little bit of kanji, or you know how kanji works, I think this is pretty good to start with, and just try to read it. But I saw some of the reviews online which were almost all great, but one person said that she was at the JLPT M5 level and it was too hard to get through this book. So she said that it was more a JLPT M4 book. I do agree with that. It is hard to get through it, but for me that's like a challenge, and I really like to use this book. Moving on to the third book on the list, which is 600 Basic Japanese Verbs. So for me, Japanese grammar is quite difficult, and especially I struggle with the verbs. So the different forms of the verbs in a sentence and how this influence the sentence, because you have different forms of the Japanese verbs, which is logical because I think most countries have different forms of the verbs, but in Japanese it does work a little bit different than from European languages. So you have like the dictionary form, which is quite easy to remember, and then you have the must form, the third form, the conditional form. And when I see these things online, when I'm looking up a verb and I see the conditional form, most of the time I don't really know what they mean by that. So I need to see an example. And yeah, it just takes me a lot of time to look up the Japanese verbs and their forms. So that's why I wanted to buy this book and have like all the basic verbs in one book that I can look it up and see all the different forms. So like that was my idea. So I bought this book for 23 euros. And I saw that this book was from a company that I already knew and liked some of their resources, which is Tuttle. I'm not sponsored or anything, but I do like their books. So I will start out with the things that I liked about this book. So this book came in 2 weeks ago. The first thing that I like is of course that you have 600 basic verbs in here, and all of those verbs are very important to know because yeah, you really need them to build a good sentence. What I also liked about this book is the introduction. So you have a lot of information about verbs. They divide all the verbs in 3 groups: the u-dropping conjugation, the ru-dropping conjugation, and the irregular conjugation. So 3 groups, and for each verb that they are discussing, they say in which group this verb belongs to. And this is important because you need to know how to conjugate a verb, and each group has their own rules, and they explain all these rules as well. Of course, I have to say that all this information you can find online for free, and there are other grammar books that also explain this. But yeah, I like to just have one book for only verbs, and this is how it looks. So they say which verb it is, how to write it in hiragana. Then you have this verb is from group 1, so they say which group it is, and then they give the English translation to this verb. So this is agaru, which is to go up, rise, get nervous, to finish, or enter. And then they give you the conjugation of the verb and a couple of practice sentences so you can see how to use this verb in a sentence. And I think this is quite informative, and you can look up every verb that you need in your basic Japanese learning. And this whole book is just verbs with their conjugation and practice sentences. So you can go through it, learn the practice sentences, and just practice with all of the different forms of the verb. So, and now the things that I didn't like about this book. The first one is that all of the forms that they explain. So like the dictionary, the plain form, they say the must form, everything is in romaji, and I don't like that, because for me it would be better if they use like the kanji or the hiragana, at least hiragana, and they write everything in romaji. And I think it's very important to remember those kanjis for the verbs, or else you still have a problem when you try to read something in Japanese. And another thing that I don't really understand, because they do give you one time the kanji and the hiragana after the kanji, of course, but they do give you one time how to write this verb in kanji, and then the sentences are all in kanji and hiragana, and the kanji don't have any hiragana and are not explained, so you only have the romaji sounding above it. I will show you. So this is one downside for me, because I think you can skip the romaji and only use kanji and hiragana and then explain the verbs in English. So is it worth the money? For me it does, because I just wanted all of the verbs together in one book so I can look them up. But if you have a good grammar book, you don't really need this book separately. And all of the information you can find online, even with the kanji and the hiragana and the right pronunciation. So honestly, you don't need this book for your learning. But if you have a hard time to remember all the verbs, or you want to just read all the verbs separately and just look at the practice sentences, I think it's a good book. And I think this book is only interesting for people who are like really in the beginning of Japanese learning. So the level JLPT and 5 and 4, because later on you really don't want to read anything in Romanji. Then the fourth book, which I was very excited about, this is my first Korean textbook, and it's Korean from zero, from the author George Trombley. I was very doubting between two books, which is Korean from zero, but also Talk to Me in Korean, because these two books come up when you're looking for Korean learning textbooks. I think they are one of the most famous textbooks for Korean learning. Why did I choose for this one? The first thing, because Talk to Me in Korean has a textbook and a workbook. This is a textbook and a workbook in one. So I think that's a big advantage, because you only need one book and you can learn the grammar, read all the information, and then do the practices in the book itself. So this book costed 28 euros and it has a workbook in it. So I think it's a good price. And the other reason why I chose this book is because it was very easy to deliver to the Netherlands. Because of everything that's going on, it would take so much more time to get the Talk to Me in Korean book to the Netherlands. I think the delivery was more than a couple of weeks, and this one came in within 2 weeks. So those reasons made me choose for this book. One of the things that I really love about these books, as well as Korean from zero as Talk to Me Korean, is that their authors do have YouTube videos about their resources. I think for every lesson you have online YouTube videos, and I think that's a big plus point, but both books have it, so it's not a reason to choose one book over the other. Both YouTube videos are great from these writers. I haven't used it all that much because most of my time I do focus on Japanese learning. Japanese is my main goal language, but in the time that I have, I also want to go through this book, but it's at a slower pace. So the great things about this book, it has some grammar, of course, it learns you Hangul right away, the Korean writing system, and it has a workbook in it. You can download the MP3 files for free on the website, so it doesn't have a CD, which I think is better because I don't like using CDs. Honestly, I don't have a small CD player, so every time that I need to listen to the CDs, I need to use my DVD player, or I need to listen to it in the car, and most of the time I won't use the CD. I think MP3 files are so much easier to use. So this is Korean from 01, but you also have Korean 2 and 3. So the first, the paragraph 0 starts with learning Hangul. You have all of this to learn Hangul. If you already know Hangul, you can skip this whole chapter and just go to chapter 1, which starts with 20 starter phrases. From chapter 1, you only use Hangul. So that's one thing that I love about this book. You don't use Romanji, so the Roman letters. You start using Hangul immediately. So you will learn quite a lot for absolute beginners, which is great for me because I don't know anything about Korean and I just started out. I think it's enough for me for this year. And my goal for Korean for this year is just being able to use Hangul, to read simple things, and to finish this book. The goal of this year is to finish this book. And I will show you how the workbook works. So you have paragraph 9 of chapter, I don't know. And then when you learn some words, you can just write them out in here, and yeah, that's how you use the workbook in this book. Yeah, so overall I'm very happy, and I think it's worth the money because you have 2 books in one, and you will learn some basic Korean language rules, grammar rules, and vocabulary. And then when you're finished with this book, you can continue with the other books from the same author, which I think it's great. It's not only one book and then you need to find another resource. So yeah, very happy with this one as well. And then the last book that I'm going to discuss in this video is the complete guide to Japanese kanji. If you follow me on Instagram, you have seen using me this book. I don't use it for active learning because this book is more like a history of kanji, because you have a lot of information. Almost all of it is of course in English, and they use Romanji. It's great to just read it on the side. So it's not the way how I learn kanji, it's just something that I like to read and to learn more about the kanji. So this book contains 2136 kanji. These are the standard characters. I hope I'm saying this right, but they also are called the Joyo Kanji. So this book starts out with a lot of information about the history of how the kanjis are introduced in Japan. So yeah, some history about China, and then a lot of text. As you can see, there's a lot of text in here. If you like to know more about history of kanji and how the writing system started in Japan and how this kanji evolved, then this book is very interesting. This book costed me 26.99, so 27 euros. It's quite pricey, but you get a lot of information. It's like a history book. And another interesting part in this book, you have like the hiragana alphabet and how it first was written, like where it originated from which kanji. So I think that's interesting as well. And they also explain the radicals and the stroke order, like the basic rules for stroke order. So yeah, it is a lot of information, but it is quite interesting when you're interested in the culture as well. This is how it looks. You have the first 80 kanjis for first grade. So this is all the 80 kanjis that first graders in Japan learn in that order. So it's not in the JLPT order, it's in the order of the elementary school and then the high school. I will start with the easiest kanji in the world, which is the kanji for 1. So you have the kanji, then you have the different soundings which are written in Romanji, unfortunately, and then you have some words with this kanji which are also written in Romanji later on. And then you have the explanation how this kanji originated, and then one mnemonic, which is 1 finger. Yeah, the mnemonics in this book are not all that good. Some of them are quite funny, some of them don't make any sense. But I only use this book for the origins of the kanji and just like, yeah, the history part. This book is also from the company Tuttle, and right now I have a lot of resources from this company. But they make a lot of language learning resources. They also have language learning resources for Korean and I think also for Chinese. I have to say most of the time they use a lot of Romanji. So I did like the Kanji Workbook, which almost doesn't use any Romanji. So yeah, love that book. And I did like their flashcards, which are also very good. I have made a video about it. But if you talk about textbooks, they use a lot of Romanji. So these were all of the books that I want to share with you guys. So we had the Kanji history book, the Korean from 0 book, the Japanese verbs, and of course 2 Japanese reading books. So I'm quite happy with my purchase, and I think I have a lot to learn as well as in Japanese as in Korean. So for next week I want to make a video about how I learned Korean and how I started out, and yeah, the resources that I use, but also how I take my notes and things like that. So I think that will be the next video. So if you liked this video, please click the like button, give it a thumbs up, but also subscribe to the channel. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, do that as well, because yeah, I post on my Instagram a little bit more than I post on YouTube, and I will respond to all of your questions, comments and DMs. So thank you for watching, guys, and I hope you like this video, and I hope I give you all the information about these books. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comments down below. And if there's something that I didn't discuss about these books or something that you're just missing on information, just ask and I will answer to all of your comments, of course. And I will see you next Sunday. Bye!